really.
No.
If you think about it, they come in there and they say, this is our plan, you're gonna assume that when they've got it marked off here, that that's gonna be the 800 or something.
That's what I assumed. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm still furious.
Was I clear?
And I'm not at all sure that it's appropriate, because I'm concerned about traffic, that's a major.
Traffic will be a major.
You know.
Let's continue on with item 2 on today's business. 0101, variance 01 at 1001 Properties, Inc. Spectre Site Design Standard varies to Chapter 834, Table 34-1, front and rear yard setback for WCF. A portion of 1 acre parcel on a portion of 1 parcel on .13 acre, 4895 South State Road 446, Salt Creek Township, Section 33, a part of 60, zone pre-existing business and environmental constraints overlay. Staff, if I could have your report, please.
Thank you. Staff's recommended motion is to disapprove this petition based on the findings. If I could interject one note for this petition. This board has had a couple, I think one setback variance for WCF towers in the past, as well as other variance proposals for WCF towers. And I just would like to keep you in mind that the purpose of this meeting, and you're directed to just review and either approve or deny variance for this tower. You're not approving or denying the placement of the tower as a whole. That's going to go to the Planning Commission on the 20th.
Okay. Just as a point for the audience here, we'll ask for people to speak in favor of the petition, and then we'll ask for people to speak against the petition. Obviously, it looks like we have a full house tonight, and we appreciate that. The only thing we would ask is try to be brief and try not to repeat all of the items on the agenda. And with that, we will call for the representative of the petitioner.
Good evening. I'm R.D. Jones, local attorney, and I represent the petitioners in this matter. The petitioners are 3 in total: Ubiquitel, Spectre Site, and 101 Properties, Inc. Spectre Site would be the owner of this cell tower. Ubiquitel would be the service provider, and 101 Properties is the landowner. I will speak briefly about this proposal for the variances, and I have 4 individuals here who are project managers, acquisition managers, RF engineer, radio frequency engineer, and site engineer to answer any technical questions that you may have. As indicated, what the ultimate purpose is for my clients to locate a cell tower on 446, approximately 1 mile from Lake Monroe on 446. The site is located at 4895 State Road 446 in what all of you, I'm sure, are aware at that site is boat storage businesses. I think a gas station in one of them, not on this property, but just north of this property, boat maintenance and storage facilities, basically. And they have been there for many years. The property there is zoned business. It's grandfathered business. When zoning was changed in that area, these businesses had to be grandfathered, which happened several years ago. The variance that is needed is a variance from the front setback of 200 feet. The ordinance states that there shall be a setback of 200 feet and 500 feet from side and rear setbacks to other property owners, that is. This location, if this cell tower is placed at this location, it would be, the tower would be approximately 35 feet from the road right-of-way, and from the actual road, it would be between 90 and 100 feet to the edge of the road. So it would be within the 200 feet of the roadway, certainly. We are asking for the variance that would permit this site to be used, and that variance would require you to simply or to only change the setback from right-of-way to 35 feet and about 260 feet on the rear setback. The reasons we're asking for this this variance is because this site is the only site that my clients could locate in the area, in the corridor along 446, which, when I say corridor, I mean the area in which a tower needs to be located so cellular use can be in that area, on Lake Monroe in that area, in Paintown, and in the surrounding area. The closest tower to this area is one located in Smithville, which is on Fairfax Road. That's approximately 1 mile from the edge of the lake, and about 3 to 3.5 miles north of this site, where there is a tower currently existing and in use. My clients are co-users on both of those towers, as are several other companies. And by the way, on this tower, it would be permitted co-user, obviously, also. Other companies have already contacted Ubiquitel inquiring about that. And I believe there can be up to 5 or 6 companies on this one tower. If a tower is not located here, then there will be an area, continue to exist as it does now, where cell phones will not be effective in that area, in most of that area, and on Lake Monroe. If a tower is placed at this site, or very near this site, then it will permit total usage, total function throughout the lake area, throughout Paintown, the state park down there, etc., between this tower and the one on Fairfax. A few days ago, last week, I was provided with a copy of the planning director's comments concerning our petition, and since that time I have obtained from various sources letters which address the concerns that the planning department had concerning this request, and I have filed those letters with Mary, and I have copies here of all of those to provide to you. First of all, the planning department has brought up the question of safety and has pointed out that this tower, it's going to be 199 feet tall. It's actually 190 feet tall, and there will be an 8-foot antenna on top of it. So it is under 200 feet tall. It was pointed out that it was believed that this might be a safety hazard because if the tower toppled over toward the road, it would land on the road and thereby not be a very good thing. I have submitted today a letter to the planning department from the project engineer, and that letter sets forth in great detail the construction of this tower, what it will withstand, etc. And it points out that this tower exceeds all federal requirements It will withstand wind up to 85 miles per hour, plus 1 inch of ice in combination with that wind. I also have here with me tonight to answer any questions concerning that, and that individual will tell you that this tower, as all of these monopole towers are made, it is made so that if it commences to topple, it will not simply topple over as something very rigid. Instead, it will collapse on itself because it has design features in it that will cause it to do that. My client owns several thousand of these towers in this country, and based upon their experience, these things are totally safe. They cause absolutely no harm to the health and safety of the residents in the surrounding area or those using roadways. With regard to adjoining property, it was stated in the planning director's comments that if this tower is constructed here, that it could or might adversely affect adjoining properties. In that, she's pointed out that to the rear, there's an 18-acre tract, which I believe is zoned forest reserve, or at least part of it is, and that it could be a residential area, and maybe to the south side of this tract. I've been down there twice and inspected this area. It is impossible for me to see how the planning director pointed out that it might be developed as residential. I don't see how any of that property could be developed as residential within 500 feet of this property, because it's a ravine that goes almost straight down. I suppose one could argue that it remotely could be, but as a practical matter, I don't see how. And I am unaware of any empirical research or studies that have been conducted that show that these towers, in fact, do decrease property values. These towers are being located in close proximity to each other throughout this country, as is necessary to permit a continuous flow of cell phone usage. And if these things were creating significant detrimental value of adjoining property, I think that we would be hearing about that and reading a lot about it. It was also pointed out by the planning department that the existing owner of this property, 101 Properties, Inc., is able to have a reasonable use of that property for boat storage and maintenance. I have submitted today a letter from the owner of that property indicating factually what the situation is, and that is that he has owned it for 10 years, and over that period of time, he has from time to time rented it out to tenants for boat storage and maintenance. The existing tenant in there defaulted last fall, went bankruptcy, and since that time there has been no tenant. There are several boats and items of boats located on this property because the owners have not picked them up, and it has required my client to hire a full-time caretaker to protect those until this spring when people pick up their boats, etc. This property is approximately 5 acres. On the south side of it, there's a huge hill that is approximately 30 to 40 feet higher than the road level. And that area up on top of that hill is totally unusable for anything. My client has, over the years, thought of ideas to utilize this property, but all of those have been stifled by the fact that the land is not perk, and my client cannot get any further sewage lines to that property, or any kind of situation that would permit more bathrooms, etc. This site is only 75 feet by 75 feet. An easement would be granted to go up the side of the hill to the site. The site basically cannot be viewed from people coming from the lake unless in the wintertime and they're back far enough from it, they might be able to see the very tip top of it. The entire tower would be in view coming from Bloomington out to the lake. But as I said, it is not in direct eyesight. It would be up on this hill. The Planning Department's comments also included the statement that there were other sites available in this area. I have submitted a letter to the Planning Department today by the land acquisition individual who personally checked this out, and he is here tonight to testify and answer any questions also. He was not able to locate any property within the permitted corridor that the landowners would lease to him. Basically, when you drive down 446 from the lake for about 3 or 4 miles back toward Bloomington until you get to the next tower, the relay tower, which is on Old 446, you see that where the land does not go straight down almost, steep ravines on each side, where there is some land along the road, there's a residence there. And that is without exception. There is one area that could have been used. The people have it for sale and would not permit the tower there because they want to sell the property. And they did not want a tower on it. There are other business locations along the road that a tower could be located, no doubt about it. But to locate it on those would require a tower probably well in excess of 200 feet tall, because those are not located on a hill as this site is located. And of course, if you have a tower that exceeds 200 feet, you've got to have lights on it. As indicated in the things we've submitted to the Planning Department, this tower will not have any lights on it. It'll have no noise on it. It will emit no noise, no emissions whatsoever that would be harmful to anyone. In investigating this matter, I have checked with every conceivable source around the lake, people concerning the Corps of Engineers, the Paintown people, the DNR law enforcement people, the DNR administration, and the State Parks Department. Those people have provided letters which I have submitted, and none of them have made any objections to this. Indeed, some of them have indicated that they say, all of them state that they don't need to use the tower right now, but they might want to somewhere down the road. This also has included a letter from the Monroe County Sheriff's Department. All of these indicate that they have no objections. I think perhaps the greatest good that a tower at this site would bring to the community would be from a public safety point of view. It's a little bit ironic that the Planning Department pointed out their concern about safety of people on the road there. But I think the real safety here is that this tower, and only this tower, will permit everyone on that lake, everyone in Paintown, and then the surrounding area to use a cell phone and count on it working right. There is no question but that there are accidents every year on the lake, many serious accidents. There's accidents in Paintown. It obviously would be a very good idea from a public safety point of view to be able to have cell phone access to for emergency help. I am aware of the fact that I think this board has granted only one setback, I think, from the 200 feet requirement, and I think that was on North 37. It was not granted as far back as this is requested, and I forget the footage, but it was granted. This board has also granted requests for setbacks for towers for sides or rears, and those have been granted in the past for as much as we are requesting here. I assume you're going to hear from all these fine people here tonight, and that's good. I think you should hear from them. But I also believe that if this variance is granted, there will be a 199-foot tower there, counting the antenna or the lightning rod. But I don't believe that it will cause those problems indicated in the report. And I don't know what Mary's position is now, or the Planning Department, since we submitted those additional documents to address those concerns, because we were only able to obtain those yesterday and today and present them today. In closing my presentation, I would like to make sure that all documents that we have submitted to the Planning Department be made a part of the record. I assume that will be done. Is that correct, Mary?
Yes, everything that you submitted is part of the official file.
Okay. And that being said, I would be happy to try to answer any questions you have. If the questions are beyond my expertise, then I would have some of these representatives come up and answer them.
I have a question. Isn't there another tower south of Smithville, off of Fairfax, close to Fairfax Marine?
There is one at Smithville on Fairfax Road, but that is
And
the...
south of there, right across, not right across, but very close to Smithville, and Fairfax Marine.
I don't believe so. I think there's one at Smithville on Fairfax.
Yeah, I believe there is one in that location, in that area, but it is, for the purposes of the Wireless Communication Facilities Chapter, for the co-location review, is that what you're thinking of? They only have to review sites within a mile. The two closest sites, existing sites to this petition site, are both about 3 miles away, north and south on 446. I believe that site is even further than 3 miles away. If you like, we have the map in the office. I can go check for you.
Okay.
Let me go check.
We have submitted a propagation map to the Planning Department, and I have another one here, and it shows that the closest ones is one about 3.5 miles north on 446 toward town, and one about a mile from the lake on Fairfax Road. The only reason the tower is needed on this site, or very close to this site, is so that the communications can be passed from this tower onto the other towers, the one on Fairfax Road and the one back towards town. I would point out to you that There is a tower about 220 feet tall located on the state grounds there by Paintown, which has been there for a number of years. That tower would be fine for my clients to locate on as a co-user or any other company, but unfortunately, the state does not permit that. And I have obtained from the state a letter stating that. We made the request of them, but they do not permit it. Now, the irony of that is that under the Federal Communications Act of Telecommunications Act of 1996, the federal government states that federal grounds can be used and will be used for these sites, and they are placed all over on federal property. And they also encourage the states to do the same thing. And I don't know about other states, but Indiana has never done that. So that is not an option. Along 446, between 446 and Highway 46, East 3rd Street, there are 5 towers at this time, counting the one by the state. Those towers are on, and one, the radio tower, out by East 3rd Street. The Telecommunications Act also specifies that obviously communities have the absolute right to regulate these towers. We acknowledge that, and we obviously agree with that policy. But they prohibit communities from prohibiting these towers. Now, we would gladly locate this tower anywhere along that corridor where it is needed. We don't care where, as long as we would as long as we could get permission to do so. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that. If anybody knows of any location that they will permit us to do it, we'd be happy to switch to that location. This is a business site. It's already business. And for all these reasons I've stated, seems to be the logical place for it. Any other questions?
I don't think so, Mr. Jones. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of the petition other than you tonight, unless we need?
Not unless you have questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. At this time, obviously there's people here to speak against the petition, and we'll try to do this in a systematic order of whoever's ready to speak, and try to be as brief as you can. I will ask you to come to the podium, give us your name and address, and then you will have to be sworn in prior to your testimony. So if you would, whoever wants to be first, why, please step to the podium.
Mr. Dillon?
Yes.
It's up to your discretion, but the rules of procedure for conduct of hearing for a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting can limit each remonstrator to speak for a limit of 5 minutes.
Yes.
It's up to your discretion
Yes.
if you want to invoke that or not.
We prefer that, and that's what I'd read in the first one here, try to hold it to a limit of 5 minutes,
Okay.
and we can go from there. If you are an attorney and I'm not aware of that fact, please tell me so, and then you won't have to be sworn in. So.
Good evening, Mr. Dillon. My name's Tom Densford. I'm a partner with the Bloomington law firm of Taylor, Bauer, and Densford. I represent property owners that are adjacent to this proposed site. A good many of them are filling this room as we speak. The basic objection that the surrounding property owners have to this project is that it meets none of the requirements for the wireless communication facilities ordinance. There are a number of permitted uses that are identified. This proposal falls into none of those. It is not a co-location of a current site. It is not an improvement or an addition to an existing structure. It doesn't replace an existing structure, and it's not located on a wireless communications facility overlay district. There is, as I understand it, a request to rezone this particular parcel for a WCF district. That has not been presented to this to this commission as of yet. I believe it's scheduled later in this month. For whatever reason, scheduling-wise, it appears to me that we have the cart before the horse in terms of requesting an exception to a zoning designation that hasn't been granted yet. This is a grandfathered business use based upon the uses of this land prior to the enactment of the ordinance. It's not a heavy business use, at least in this particular site. And until it is approved as an overlay district, it seems a bit premature to be requesting for an exception to the requirements of that district. The other possibility is that this proposal is exempt from the ordinance if it were used for police, fire, ambulance, emergency use, or for private use like satellite dishes. It falls within none of those requirements. As close as it comes is the possibility of a conditional use, an exception from the design standards, or variance from the design standards, that require this commission to go further in terms of granting an exception than it is ever historically done. Our research indicates that there was only one other site where a variance or an exception was requested to these setbacks that are contained in the ordinance. That petition was voluntarily withdrawn, and as I recall, the petitioner is now co-locating on the Hoosier Energy site. I would point out that site also was primarily agricultural in nature, not heavily traveled, and certainly not within falling distance of a number of residential sites. If you look to the staff report that has been submitted, there is discussion of particularly sensitive properties. Those particularly sensitive properties are the residential areas owned by these people who will speak in a moment. There are Forest Park Estates to the west. There is Winfrey Estates, and there's approximately 18 acres of forest reserve property owned by Mr. and Mrs. Scanlon that is used for their residence and has been approved for 3 other residences. Many of these residential areas are within the 200 feet of this proposed tower, and certainly within the aesthetic view site of the tower. There are many other properties that are affected. So in terms of the potential precedential value of this exception, it is the belief of a good number of the homeowners that the commission would be taking a step backwards in terms of the work that was done by the WCF task force and by all the public input. I mean, the 200-foot setback and the 500-foot setback are not arbitrary figures. They were arrived at based upon the purported purposes of this ordinance, which include to conserve the scenic, historic, aesthetic, environmental quality of the county, the tourism industry, to avoid adverse impacts of wireless communications facilities, promote long-range planning, and to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare, and give due regard to the comprehensive plan of Monroe County. There will be people that will speak to the scenic aspect of this corridor along 446. It is a heavily traveled area, particularly in the spring and the summer, also in the fall with boating and various outdoor hiking and other recreational uses that all commingle at this point with a fairly heavy residential use. The particularly sensitive nature of this area and the surrounding residential areas are directly opposed to this particular site. It is the opinion of various people that there are other potential sites that may or may not have been exhausted. I checked the file as early as earlier today, and there was not any any meaningful documentation that I saw that would indicate there are no other prospective sites. I'll be looking forward to reviewing the information that Mr. Jones submitted. The only responses I saw from any state agencies or areas indicated they had no interest of co-locating on this tower, which makes me question whether or not it is necessary. If there are definitive statements in terms of no co-location on state properties or state facilities or other private sites available, then it's the petitioner's burden to demonstrate that, and I encourage the Commission to hold them to this burden. In closing, I would ask the Commission to review closely the staff report, review closely the purposes and the requirements of the ordinance, and find that this proposal meets none of those requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi.
We're going to have 8 of those, I think.
Time to breathe.
Okay, let's try it again.
Okay. My name is Paula Boner. I live at 7313 Salt Creek Drive in Salt Creek Township. I'd like to...
Ms. Boner, do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Please continue.
I have a petition here signed by roughly 65 residents. All of these residents were probably within about a mile of the proposed site for the tower. I would say conservatively that's about 90% of the residents within a mile of this tower. All the people on this petition are opposed to this tower being here. And in fact, I walked around with this petition a lot. Most of them say cellular coverage down here is just fine. They really don't need it. So I'd like to hand this in.
Okay. How many copies have you got of that? Just the one?
This is the original. We have a copy for ourselves.
Okay, I better give that to Mary there if you would. And
I also have with this a letter from the property owner directly across 446 from the proposed site, and he was not able to come this evening, so he wrote a letter for your consideration.
okay, that's with this.
That is
Okay.
within that. Just a little history that I've been able to dig up about the ordinance on regarding WCF towers. The Monroe County Planning Department started work on an ordinance regulating the placement and operation of WCF towers in about the spring of 1998. They didn't take the job on lightly. The ensuing year saw 2 task forces comprised of members of the Monroe County Planning Commission, local residents and property owners, industry representatives, the Monroe County Communications Committee, and the Monroe County Zoning Ordinance Committee. These task forces met weekly and sometimes twice weekly in an effort to educate themselves about WCF, the technologies they use, and the physical requirements of implementing these technologies. They studied ordinances from around the country in an effort to see what was working elsewhere. Several Plan Commission meetings were held throughout the year, and there was a great deal of public interest and input both at these meetings and in newspaper articles and letters to the editor in the local papers. In the spring of 1999, the moratorium on the construction of new communications towers was lifted, and the new ordinance was put in place. It had been a true example of government process working the way it should. Now, less than 2 years later, the Monroe County Planning Commission is being petitioned for a variance to this ordinance. Actually, several substantial variances. The petitioner has asked that we accept a 35-foot front yard setback rather than the ordinance's requirement of 200 feet from State Road 446, and at a site that is at the entrance to several destinations of tourists coming to Monroe County seeking a relaxed and natural setting: the Paintown State Recreation Area, the Hoosier National Forest, and Lake Monroe. They also ask that the residents near this site be made to accept a variance that allows a rear yard setback less than half that the ordinance requires. We, the citizens of Monroe County, the people who live in the neighborhoods directly adjacent to this proposed tower, believe that this petition does not merit such a drastic deviation from the ordinance. We believe the petitioner has not adequately demonstrated and documented an inability to co-locate on other nearby towers and on other structures such as water towers in this area. We believe the petitioner has not fully demonstrated a need for this proposed tower, and we believe that the petitioner has not chosen a site suitable for such a tower. Therefore, we ask that the Board of Zoning Appeals, that the Plan Commission uphold the ordinance as written and deny this petition for variance. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
I'm Dave Richardson. I also live at 7313 East Salt Creek Drive.
You swear to affirm the penalties for perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Please continue.
I'd like to address how the placement of the cell tower would not be compatible with Monroe County's stated principle of conserving the scenic, historic, and aesthetic and environmental qualities of Lake Monroe. I think it was clearly stated in the staff report that the placement of the cell tower at the proposed site would adversely impact the aesthetics of the surrounding area and the environment. Lake Monroe is the most visited lake in the state, as I'm sure you're well aware of. There are more than 1 million people who visit the area to enjoy the lake, the natural environment around it. Many people, thousands of people every year come to the state recreational area at Paintown to enjoy boating and hiking, and et cetera. And I won't repeat that again because that has already been stated. Mr. Jones, I think, did not address the adverse effects on the scenic and aesthetic environment. I think he didn't. I think he skipped over that. He said that the hill on the site was totally unusable for anything. I'm wondering if he didn't look at the trees behind the hill. You were speaking about green space earlier in the Menard issue, and I guess we're here to say that we already have green space in certain areas of the county, and it's our responsibility to preserve them. People come to the state recreational area to enjoy the natural environment. It's pretty much seen as a gateway from the north, from Indianapolis and the surrounding area to Lake Monroe, to launch your boats, to enjoy the area. And I think Mr. Jones stated that as you would be driving down the highway, you would see the cell tower there. So I think that is in direct violation of the regulations concerning aesthetics. I think that's a big concern, and without wasting a lot of your time, I think that is one of the most important issues. That these variances are going counter to the county's stated position on preserving the natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Sally Havens. I live at 7074 Salt Creek Drive.
I'm sorry I didn't get your last name.
Havens.
Havens? Okay, Miss Havens. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief? Please continue.
I wanted to make a couple of comments about the personal observations of the residents in the need for a cellular tower in that area. We had precious little time, but we did go door to door. And as you'll see, the vast majority of people feel they don't need a cellular tower. And the reason we feel we don't need it is because our cell phones work out there. We drive 446, we live in the area, we use the lake, and with the exception of some very isolated coves or pockets, we don't have a problem. And so on your main thoroughfares, on your main roads, and in your homes, our cell phones work. We were also reassured to see a letter from Major Skinner of DNR Law Enforcement. He wrote they have a comparable tower and have no need for a new tower. Now, if you look closely at that letter, or if you don't have it, he said our primary concern would be how that new site would impact our law enforcement efforts in the area, and our radio communications in particular, and that was of concern to us. So I just wanted to reiterate that the majority of people in the area on the lake say we don't need this. It's a vast reservoir. It covers many, many miles. Why don't they put the tower where there's a need? Many of us bought homes in that area because of the restrictions of the zoning ordinance, and our neighborhood does not want or need a cellular tower. The site is inappropriate. We live in an exquisitely beautiful peninsula. He said we're a mile from the lake, but on two sides we're a half mile from the lake. This is a peninsula, and it's in the area 2 of the Lake Monroe watershed where the wild eagles soar over our homes, where the sandhill cranes and other birds migrate, and please don't let it be despoiled. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mark Scanlon, S-C-A-N-L-A-N. I live at 4885 South State Road 446.
Okay, Mr. Scanley, do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
Please continue.
Thank you. This cellular tower is not suitable because it does not comply with the setback guidelines of the Monroe County zoning ordinance, as you've heard. Our home is located due east of the proposed site. Our property is only 240 feet from the proposed 199-foot tower, less than half of the 500-foot required in zoning ordinance. While I'm not a surveyor, after reviewing a land survey prepared by Archer and Associates of our property, we believe our house alone would be less than 700 feet from the tower. Monroe County Plan Commission has developed an ordinance to protect its citizens' public safety, health, and general welfare. Given the restriction of the ordinance, we encourage the board to follow the recommendations of Mary Ogle and to reject this application for variance. The applicant is not asking for a mere 10 to 25 feet variance. They're asking for more than half of the required rear setback. In addition, on the front setback, they're asking for only 18% of what is required by the ordinance. Our 18 acres were purchased with the possibility of dividing our property into 2 additional parcels when our daughters, who we have, are grown. They could then build houses on these parcels. The proximity of one of these parcels to the proposed tower would definitely terminate this dream, and you could put a house along this slope, like our house is built along a very steep slope. One final comment is Mr. R.D. Jones proposed or stated that the tower was around 200 feet from the road. We have a letter from Mr. Jones to the Board of Zoning Appeals which states the monopole would be approximately 55 to 60 feet from the edge of the road. I'm not sure why there's a discrepancy there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Kate Scanlon. I also live at 4885 South State Road 446.
Okay, Ms. Scanlon, do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Please continue.
Safety is a major concern of ours. Although proponents may say that this tower is designed to collapse upon itself, we agree with the findings of the Commission, who've determined that additional setback distances may be needed to protect the residential properties from components scattered by a storm. This ordinance provides our margin of safety. The wind velocities are much greater on the ridges than they are in the adjacent valleys. The proposed tower is on the highest point along the ridge behind our house. This is a safety issue for our family as well as our home. The tower would be highly vulnerable to thunderstorm activity. Setback requirements do provide this margin of safety. In addition, the falling debris could also damage the existing boat storage business on the property as well as the neighboring businesses. I know that they say that it would collapse upon itself, but I didn't hear them say that it had collapsed upon itself before, that they have built these towers and one of them did collapse and it fall directly on itself. I didn't hear that in testimony. The 35-foot setback from the right-of-way of the State Road 446 should be a concern to everyone who drives on this road. This is a major north-south thoroughfare in Monroe County, and everyone here who has driven that road would agree that it's a winding section of road and it's often covered in fog. Should the 199-foot tower collapse or any debris from it fall on the roadway, it could not only block 446, but it could cause a fatal accident. Yet another safety issue, the power lines that are located between the proposed site and the road. You see, we believe that in addition to protecting the citizens, these ordinances were to protect the county from civil lawsuits in the event of an accident as well. We also believe that the ordinance was designed to conserve the scenic investment our county has in the tourism business associated with Lake Monroe. We've heard about this before. We attract people from the community. We attract people from out of counties. I see license plates from out of state who are staying at Paintown. We have hunters, fishermen. It's well known for the beauty in the spring and the fall. We were attracted to Monroe County because of these ordinances designed to protect our safety and well-being. Now, I know that the people who researched and developed these standards would have strong feelings about companies from outside our area coming in and asking that we vary or compromise those very standards designed to protect us. We urge you to uphold the Monroe County zoning ordinance and the findings and recommendations of Planner Mary Ogle. We respectfully request that you deny this application for variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak against the petition? And bear in mind, please feel free to speak, but if it's repetitive, try to eliminate that. If you would, ma'am, please.
My name is Sharon Sklar, and I live at 7216 East Salt Creek.
Okay.
East Salt Creek Drive.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Please continue.
Basically, I'm just summarizing what everyone else in our group has brought to your attention. In closing, we would like to remind the board and the commissioners that we expect and hope that those who have been voted into community offices will uphold their responsibilities to their fellow citizens of Monroe County, the place we call home. Your stated purpose is to conserve the scenic, historic, aesthetic, and environmental quality of Monroe County and the tourism industry based thereon from the adverse impacts of wireless communications facilities development. Our community has presented to you very strong reasons why we should not have the WCF installed on this location, and these reasons in themselves should be valid enough for disallowance of this particular site. Though we know that health issues are not acceptable to the board as reasons not to install the tower in this location, we do want it on record that we are very concerned about long-term negative influences from electromagnetic fields that will be emitted from the tower. We can't possibly know yet what the effects will be on the human physiology, wildlife, and plant life of this delicate and precious area. We all share the wonder and beauty that the watershed provides us each day. The primary reason why most of us have chosen to live in this area. And just because we don't have data, that doesn't mean that we should turn a blind eye to the potential adverse influences that could destroy the balance of nature. With this in mind, we ask the board and the commissioners to deny the variance and proposed rezoning of the property owned by 1001 Properties at 8995 State Road 446. And I would like you to realize that we do have a strong representation here this evening, and I'd like everyone who lives in our community to please rise and show where they stand. And that's against this proposed site. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Frank Velasco, and we live at 7025 Salt Creek Drive.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Please continue.
Contrary to Mr. Jones, we do live on one of those ravines, and we have no problem with our house. Secondly, the lake is used by the military for a lot of their aircraft maneuvers, and a lot of the planes that have flown well below the 199-foot level. And if they were to ever hit the tower it wouldn't worry about the tower collapsing. You'd have to worry also where the plane was going. And it'd be in the direction of our house, which is in that corridor. And then finally, third, I took my cell phone and we drove every corner of that lake. And I was able to use that phone without any problem at all. I had one spot where I couldn't reach the internet, but then you have to have a really strong signal to get on the internet. But other than that, there's been no problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name's Carrie Mealy, and I live at 7074 Salt Creek Drive.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties for perjury the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Please continue.
I was looking at the geography of the area, and I would really appreciate it if you could look at these maps as I talk. Would that be possible?
No, not really, because you need to be at the podium. I don't know how you...
Well, I can be at the podium, but can I have...
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to... I thought you were wanting to speak here. We can share.
That's fine, we can share.
We can share, ma'am.
I'm speaking on behalf of creatures who have no voice, and that's the eagles. If you look, on the map where it says Monroe Lake Project, you'll see the road to Paintown. Do you all see that? They proposed to put this tower just right below that road, just south. And if you notice, that's on a peninsula, and that's on the narrowest part of that peninsula. If you look to the north, there's a part of the lake where some of the eagles nest. And in addition, there are other eagles around that aren't nesting. But I talked to Rex Waters at Paintown, and he's an eagle expert over there. And he told me that the eagles fly all around Lake Monroe. And I said, well, if they were up in the air and wanted to get to feed down below, wouldn't they fly right over this section? And he said, yeah, that's probably true. And I said, as a matter of fact, I've seen eagles flying right over our road when I walk my dogs. He also told me that he has seen dead eagles around every other type of tower. The one exception is this monopole, and that is scientifically unknown because it's a fairly new construction. But you have to keep in mind this is a very foggy area. It won't have lights on it. It seems to me it's extremely likely that at some point an eagle might hit that tower, or migrating birds heading north might hit that tower. And we get sandhill cranes over our area too. As we get, we're on the major flyway, we get all the migrating birds. Let me just check whether I said everything I want to say. I guess the question is whether our eagles should be guinea pigs to scientific uncertainty. it's true that these won't have guy wires. It's true they appear to be a safer design, but it's also true that they're very likely to hit it. A plane is able to hit it. You know, for many reasons, this is just not an appropriate site. And I think if you look at the geography, you can see that it isn't. This site is less than a half mile in two directions to the lake. It's less than a mile if you head down the road to the lake. But it's right in the way, as far as I can tell, for the eagles. Thank you very much.
Thank you. What are you about to give us to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Please continue.
I oppose the tower for a number of reasons. I wanted to also speak because unfortunately I'm part of the 10% that didn't get to sign the petition. I missed the opportunity, and I apologize to my fellow residents. I also oppose it because it's a clear violation of zoning regulations that are meant to protect our property. I find it offensive that someone put a pole up at 199 feet as a private pilot to violate or to go around laws that are designed to protect us, poor people that sometimes get too low. The microwave dangers are inherent in these things. And also, something you haven't considered is living out there and seeing some of our fellow Hoosiers come back after a Sunday on the lake. They need all their faculties holding onto their steering wheels. They drive that curvy road, and God forbid they could use their cell phones while they're driving. And unfortunately, in parts of it, the cell service is pretty sporadic, and it's probably a positive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to speak against the petition? Okay, if not, Mr. Jones, I think you have some rebuttal time, and possibly, I think there was one gentleman that had a question about the distance between the road and the tower, if you can.
First, regarding that, it is true in my petition I stated that it was 45 feet from the road. That was an estimate by me based upon the drawings that I had seen. I had not at that time had an opportunity to visit the site. I have visited the site twice, and it clearly is 90 to 100 feet from the edge of the road where the tower would be. And that is marked there so that people can see precisely where the center of the tower would be. Okay. First, I believe our petition does clearly indicate we're seeking a rezone to the extent necessary for this facility. Second, this board has granted setback variances for towers. There is no doubt about that, and Mary can verify that. Regarding houses in that area, there is not a house within 500 feet of the property line. It would be very difficult for most of the property around there to build a house that close to the line. It was stated by one of the remonstrators that we've made no attempts to co-locate. Please be advised that this company does not own a tower in Monroe County. This company is currently co-located on all of these towers out there. The Fairfax Tower and the tower owned by Pinnacle, which is about 3.2 miles back towards Bloomington from this site. If we could co-locate in this corridor, we would be happy to do so. Co-locating costs money, but it is cheap compared to spending $250,000 to build this tower, to put this tower up. That brings me to the point made by one person that this tower is not needed. I believe Mary Ogle can tell you that she personally tested her cell phone and it did not work from that location. There may be times when cell phones do work on an especially clear day, or perhaps in the specific location they are. But as you can see from the propagation map that we gave you, this has to be a tower in this corridor, very close to where this site is, in order to connect with the tower on Fairfax Road, which this board also approved, and is within 1 mile of the lake. I apologize for not addressing the scenic question, which Mary brought out in her comments. There are already 5 towers on 446 or near 446, and you can see them all from 446. 3 of those towers are well in excess of 200 feet, including the state's, and they have to have lights, flashing lights, etc., on those towers. All of those towers can be seen from going both ways on 446. I would be the first person to admit that looking at one of these towers is not the most scenic thing in the world. I admit that. But if we denied towers based on that, we wouldn't have any towers in this country. Certainly not near any road where you could see them. Well, that's where the towers have to be. It doesn't do any good to place a tower 5 miles out in the woods, because it serves no purpose. You have to put them along the roads. That's why you see these requests along 37, along 46, along this road, Fairfax Road, and so on. That's where people tend to use their cell phones. I want to correct one gentleman who stated that I stated that this tower would be 200 feet from the road, I believe. I have never stated that, or from the right-of-way either. What I stated was that it would be 90 to 100 feet from the edge of the road, and that is fact. Regarding a comment about lightning storms, this tower will have an 8-foot lightning rod on the top of it, which will effectively prevent any damage caused by lightning. Regarding RF emissions, I will simply comment that I have an expert here on RF emissions who can answer any questions, but suffice it to say that that is not a consideration for this board under federal law. We have complied with the Federal Communications Commission, Telecommunications Commission, and they have certified that we are permitted to put this tower up at this location, and it is not an RF emissions problem. Concerning eagles, I know of no empirical study anywhere that says that these towers, that birds run into these towers and kill themselves. I, too, talked to Rex Waters at the Point Administrative Office. I sat there for approximately an hour and talked to Mr. Waters. He never came up with a single reason, a single drawback to having this tower there. I specifically asked him, whether they had any experience with eagles or other birds running into the other tower, and he said none to his knowledge. Where he comes up with, I've seen dead eagles all around towers, if that's what he said, I am totally aghast at that. Lastly, I want to iterate to these fine people here, I wish we didn't have to put a tower out there. I wish we didn't have to put a tower anywhere. But we can't, and I wish we didn't have to put a tower 199 feet tall. But you have to, or the cell phones will not work. There is no other place in that area that we can co-locate. We've asked the state, they have a permissible tower there, but they will not let us or anybody use it. So this is a situation where, to satisfy the requirements that are specifically authorized and addressed in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, We need this tower in this corridor. We don't care whether it's on this site or if it's back up the road 200 yards. That doesn't matter to us. If these fine people would point out a location that in this corridor that we could use, we will gladly use it. We are prepared to attempt to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Any further questions from Mr. Jones from the board or staff? Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I would just like to reiterate and testify that what Mr. Jones said is true. I did take the staff.
Sorry.
I just have one more minute.
Yes. Yes, keep it brief, please.
Okay. On the back of my cell phone, I have a booster. Cell phone and drive anywhere on the lake, and I guarantee you it will work. You too, Mary. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions before we, any comments from staff before we go forward?
No, just to direct you again that the purpose of these proceedings are for the variance issue
Okay.
specifically.
If not, I would entertain a motion from a member of the board.
I move that we disapprove this petition based on the findings.
Motion is made and seconded. Read the petition, please.
Dale Conard,
Yes.
Lynn Dillon,
Yes.
Carol Weiss,
Yes.
John Irvine.
Yes.
Motion carries to disapprove.
Thank you.
No, and report.
Okay. Let's give them time to, yes. Okay, thank you.
We still have the annual report.
Yes. Let's, if you want to stay, we have some more business. If not, please be as quiet and exit as quickly as possible. The third item of business tonight is the annual report. And on the annual report, one of the most important things, obviously, that we're looking at is the Board of Zoning Appeals. And it states the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals is a 5-member quasi-judicial board. It has the responsibility of judging the appropriateness of application to development and use standards to individual properties. The board is established to remedy situations which the terms of the zoning ordinance impose a hardship on unique parcels in the community. In the year 2000, 10 variances, 1 was a use variance, and 8 conditional use petitions were filed. The Board of Zoning Appeals heard 18 cases. Of those, the board denied a total of 4 for an approval rate of 78%. Further comments from the members of the board or staff?
Yeah, could you write that in such a way that we would know whether those were what the legal recommendations were or not? In other words, when you say we have an approval rate of 78%, it sounds like you recommended approval and we denied approval to 22. The way,
Okay,
you see what I'm saying?
right.
And a lot of them come to us with a recommendation
In other words,
for
how the
denial.
staff's
I
recommendation.
guess I would, in general, I would, just from being here, an overwhelming majority of the variance cases that we bring before you, staff makes a negative recommendation on. So I would assume that, I would have to say, I can't even remember this year, a variance case where we made a positive recommendation.
Not much in here.
So I can't even remember one, so I'm
Didn't we on
thinking that
one
of
water-
the,
Didn't we on one of the cell towers that was located over in,
I think that was 99.
oh,
So I'm thinking
You
that
can pull a
really
little thing
of the
like right
9
here on me, huh?
design standard variance, staff probably made a negative recommendation on all of them, and you guys actually approved 4. Do you want me to verify that at the next meeting, just out of
Yeah, it would
curiosity?
be interesting
Okay.
to know how,
I'll break it down a little bit more for you.
Okay, that'd be great.
we all hate to be rubber stamps.
Mr. Schilling,
So you didn't agree with this for 4 times?
have you got any things of
I did.
great interest to us?
I do not.
Actually, I have something to report.
Okay, Mary, go right ahead.
Just an update. We are still searching for a permanent planning director. It's my understanding it'll be some time still. In the interim, I have hired a temporary planner one. I just hired her this week. Her name is Tanya Gronholm, and you might be seeing her probably in a few months.
Okay.
She has a master's degree from SPIA. She's a very nice woman, very capable of doing the job. Other than that, we weren't going to have a meeting next month, but now we are for the Menards case. Is there anything specifically for that situation, in addition to what you suggested to Mr. Smith, that you would like staff to do?
It's just not clear to me when we as a plan commission approve something, all believing that it was not what we were approving.
Right.
Where that leaves us and what remedies we have for that.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that we would have denied it had we known that that lot wouldn't do 880. But since everyone assumed that it would, and as Steve said, you know, what do we want? We don't, at least I don't have any idea what our options are.
Okay. Meaning, I guess specifically, what the options would be to get additional green space.
The thing about that subdivision is it met the criteria as it was shown, whether Menards goes there or not. So that was something that approval was pretty much necessary because they met the criteria. If they were coming in for a design standards variance, it seems that the options are at least two of them that I can think of. One is, you know, grant it or deny it. If they anticipated getting that parking, they're not entitled to the variance as a matter of right. So if they come in and they don't meet their burden of proof, deny the variance. Our ordinance says that off-street parking can be met off-site if it's within 700 feet of the building. So they would have to comply with that. They could go onto those other lots as long as they're within 700